Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's session all about hardware inventory coverage. In this session, we're going to look at what hardware inventory coverage actually means, what you need to be aware of, and how you can track your own hardware inventory within your organization. So first of all, let's actually define what is hardware inventory coverage. And this is basically the percentage of your estate covered by your asset management database. So essentially, we are looking at the AMDB being the golden source, the golden record, the golden database for all of the information related to your hardware assets. This is basically what you've defined as a hardware asset. So what you've defined as a hardware asset may be completely different in another organization or to another ITAM team. It completely, depends on what you've defined as part of your hardware asset type scope. But in this, we are looking to make sure that we basically cover everything that is within scope of ITAM into the asset management database. But in order to know that, you're going to need to know what percentage of your estate is already covered within your asset management database. So this takes into consideration the total count of asset types within your scope. So say, for example, you're only looking at laptops, desktops, mobiles, and tablets, then that's the only things that you'd go and look for in other inventory sources. If you're also looking for monitors, switches, routers, firewalls, servers, storage arrays, etc., then of course your hardware inventory coverage is going to be a lot greater because you've got a much bigger scope. So this is taking into having a look at everything that you've got within your ITAM scope and all of the individual assets that you might have out there. They will all contribute towards your inventory coverage percentage. These lists and these assets can be coming from multiple different sources. They may not all be coming from one single inventory tool or one single technology that you've deployed. They could be coming from multiple. You could have one that's just set for your laptops and your desktops, for example. You could have a completely different mobile device management solution, which is tracking your mobiles and your tablets. You could even then have an even different solution that's tracking your network assets, another one that's tracking your infrastructure equipment. You see what it can come from a multiple different sources, but you're going to need to take all of that data and put it into one source, which is your asset management database. As we said, that is where all of the golden central source of truth should be. So you're going to need to take this data from all of these other tools and put it into the AMDB. We're also going to be heavily reliant on reports from these other tools to actually validate the coverage of our asset management database, just to understand what the percentage is of the coverage. You may get a bit of a shock if you've never done this before and you've never actually proactively gone out and audited these other solutions and got exports, raw data from these tools, compared it with your asset management database, and then gone, oh no, we're only tracking 60% of our network equipment, 78% of our end user based stuff, 50% of our mobiles. It may be a bit of a shock, but then at least it gives you a target list on what you need to go after, and understand why they're not coming into your asset management database. If you've got APIs, 9 times out of 10, this should be an automatic, talk between the two systems, your AMDB and the inventory tool. So there may be a technical reason as to why certain assets are slipping through the net and not coming into your asset management database. The main reason that we want to do this is to compare those inventory tools and our asset management databases to ensure that the AMDB is complete. I like to do this on at least a monthly basis, because your asset management database can very quickly get outdated if you're missing assets that have been inventoried via these other inventory tools. All it takes is for one API to stop updating or stop working, and suddenly you're months behind all of the updates that should be happening, new assets that have been created or purchased within the organization that you've just assumed are being added into the AMDB because you have that API integration. So we like to conduct these audits on at least a monthly basis. For more troublesome solutions, it might be more frequent than that. If an API is constantly going down, or if that solution's had an update, you want to make sure that it's still populating the AMDB as you want it to. Really great way of identifying anything that's missing, identifying any technical issues, and righting those wrongs so they do come into the AMDB. The percentage is then when you're getting your AMDB, and we'll cover this in more detail, but you're taking an export from your AMDB. all of the other inventory tools that you're using to track these assets, and then validating what's missing, what's in these other tools that's not in the AMDB. You can then calculate your percentage by an asset type, or even your overall hardware inventory coverage, simply by looking at everything and then deciding what's in the AMDB, what isn't in the AMDB, what coverage the AMDB is tracking compared to what's physically out there. It's really important to say here as well that you may also have manual lists for uninventoryable assets that you've defined as an asset within your IT asset management function, but also for DMZs or no-go areas that you physically can't put an inventory tool in. And we've got a slide discussing that in more detail. But overall, in a nutshell, that is what your hardware inventory coverage is. What's in your AMDB compared to what's out there with all of your inventory and discovery sources. What's missing, what isn't missing, what's being updated, what isn't being updated. And it's a fantastic way to show the effectiveness of ITAM if you've got a high inventory coverage percentage, or giving you a focus on what you need to improve upon moving forward. So why is your inventory coverage important within IT asset management and also hardware asset management? So it allows ITAM to effectively manage all the IT asset types within scope throughout their life cycle. Remember what we said before, that it may be that you're physically missing significant assets, significant quantities of assets, so you're not managing their warranty information, scheduled retirement dates, break fix, incidents even assigned to that CI, so you can see that the device keeps failing on battery or whatever it may be. You're missing out on all of that if you do not have these assets within your asset management database, but you have them in other inventory sources. It may be even that other teams are seeing this and don't understand or realize the importance of having it in the AMDB, or don't even know themselves that it's not in the asset management database. It also provides visibility and transparency of your whole hardware estate. You think about all of the KPIs, the budgeting, the senior leadership requirements now as well within ITAM to say, what have we got? Where is it? When is it due for refresh? Is it being proactively used? What problems are we having with it, etc.? You won't be able to do that as effectively or as accurately if you do not have all of your hardware assets that are under your scope in the AMDB. And again, if you're decentralized, if you're disjointed and not speaking to your colleagues in other teams that do own these inventory source and data sources, they may not even know that you can't see these within your AMDB until you're way down the life cycle of that asset, and suddenly it's a nasty surprise that you've got an extra 10 iPads that you need to buy, or an extra 2 switches or routers or 5 firewalls that you didn't realize because they weren't in the AMDB, and now your infrastructure team, security teams are coming to you saying we need to replace them. It's just, something that absolutely needs to be considered. And it's just another benefit of doing these audits and having that high inventory coverage percentage. It also helps with that accurate reporting and data analysis, particularly at the moment with budgets. Hardware budgets in particular seem to keep coming down and down and down. The life cycle of the asset is being extended beyond its warranty period in most cases. You've got a 3-year warranty, but you're now doing a 4-year laptop or desktop life cycle, for example. How can you accurately report on what your hardware refresh cycles will be and what your budgeting plan for those life cycle refreshes are going to be if you don't have complete visibility of your hardware estate? As we said before, it's just going to bring up unwelcome, unwanted surprises that you may not have factored in the budget for, that you've got approval, however limited that hardware budget is. You may not have factored that in, and then you have to go, hands out, please can we have some more money because we missed these assets because they weren't coming into the AMDB. But if you're being proactive, looking at these inventory sources, doing this whole process of checking the AMDB versus the inventory source, identifying what's missing, you can proactively, even manually add it into the AMDB. If you can't get the API, you can't get that data in there automatically, at least manually add it in so that you are managing the life cycle, you are accurately reporting and providing data analysis to your ITAM senior stakeholders, your ITAM senior sponsor, and your leadership teams. So the financial overview of the whole hardware estate as well. So if you don't have these assets within your AMDB but in other inventory sources, you as the ITAM team are not going to be able to forecast what the future spend is for hardware refresh rates, and you're also not going to be able to provide that reporting on what you spent on hardware in the past year. You may be missing, ones or twos or tens or 20s or hundreds even, and you're not able to provide that accurate reporting and financial overview of your hardware asset estate. Again, this just kind of shows whether ITAM does or does not have a control over their hardware infrastructure. If you are able to provide this information, it makes you look amazing for your leadership team and your stakeholders. If you can't provide that information, questions start to be asked as to ITAM's effectiveness within the organization. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. Money is king at the moment. You can then track consumption and optimization opportunities if you've got everything in your AMDB. You can still leverage the data and information that's coming from these other inventory sources to actually give you the usage and consumption info. A lot of AMDBs have like most recent discovered date or something like that, but the actual native tool that the data is coming from may even have more usage information. It may show that it's switched between users, that device, it's not followed the right process. A user has more than one asset of the same asset type, so you can question and say, well, why? And you can reclaim assets that have been offline for whatever parameters you've set for your inactive hardware usage audits. Speaking of, if you haven't got everything in your AMDB, how are you going to proactively and effectively do your internal hardware audits? You're going to be missing a subset of your assets. You're not going to be auditing them. They could even be sat in a drawer, not doing anything. Whether you could recover, put into stock and meet another request moving forward further down the line. If you're missing them and you don't know where they are, you may actually end up going and spending money. You may end up going and buying stuff because you don't think you've got the stock, because you don't have the full visibility of the estate for your Windows laptops or your Apple MacBooks, because you haven't done this process to see that, oh, hold on, our Mac tool is showing that we have 500 Macs in our estate. Our AMDB is only showing 350. Well, why is that? Where's that delta coming from? How are they not coming into the AMDB? Oh, actually, these out of that ones that are missing, we've got 50 of them that aren't even being used, haven't been used in the last 30 days. But I've got no stock and I've got requests over here. So you can get that information, you can get that data, go get some assets back, reclaim them through your internal audit process, and ultimately spend less on new equipment. And finally, one of the big reasons as to why this is important, it also supports internal and external audit requirements. If you've ever gone through an internal or an external ITAM audit, one of the things that they look for, as well as your processes and policies, is a data subset, a data example, if you like, to show, okay, well, prove to me that you've got all of your assets under control. If you go in and say, well, we've got 500 laptops in this tool, an extra 250 over here in this tool, but that's not in that tool, you might get away with being able to demonstrate that you know that there's that disparity between your AMDB and inventory sources. But if you then get an export from tool X and compare and your AMDB, and the auditor goes, well, hold on, your AMDB is missing all of these assets. Did you know about it? What are you doing about it? How are you managing them? Unfortunately, we've seen some cases whereby we've come in after a failed audit, we've looked at that, and the ITAM team or the ITAM person or whoever's responsible for ITAM hasn't been aware of these assets in these inventory tools. So unfortunately failed the audit because they could not show that they had control of their IT equipment and their hardware assets. So by having this process in place, by taking your inventory coverage seriously, you'll also be able to help support internal and external audits, and it won't be such a mad panic trying to get all of the inventory data, compare it with the AMDB, and try and pre-guess what the audit people are going to ask for and say, because you're doing it on a regular basis. You know what's missing, you're aware of it. It's not an unknown unknown, it's a known unknown, and it may not even be a known unknown because your inventory tool may give you information, but you know it's not in the AMDB, and you're going to be proactively working to fix that and get it into the AMDB so that you've got that golden record and that central source of truth. So let's have a look at the different inventory sources that you can actually leverage when comparing and doing the inventory coverage percentage. It's a process in itself, and we do actually have a template process that I can show you in a second. So the first things first, to make this a lot easier on yourself, is to create APIs. So these are application programming interfaces, and these are for automated updates between inventory technologies and the asset management database. For example, you could have an API with SCCM and your AIMDb in ServiceNow. So the SCCM is the primary inventory tool, and it'll update based on that unique identifier of a serial number. It'll update the asset and CI in the AIMDb once a day or once every few hours, or whatever the parameters are that you've set. It could also create these assets if you want it to. That's an important bit there to say, if you want it to, because if it's not configured properly, it may not see the serial number correctly. You may, for example, Lenovo's love to put an S at the beginning of some things, and Apple used to do the same as well, and you have to drop that because that's not what the inventory tools see. So you may have someone who isn't aware of that, has added the asset into the AIMDb manually. It's then come in and said, oh no, I can't find an exact match because there's an S in front of the serial number of that one. I'm going to create another asset. And you get a lot of duplication and even more cleanup that you need to do within your AIMDb, and it just really does screw the data accuracy that you have within your asset management database if you do that. So you need to define before you start creating these APIs whether you want APIs to create assets that it can't see in the AIMDb, or if you want it to enrich certain fields within the asset and the CI, or even both. You could say that you want it to do both. What I would suggest if you do want it to create assets is to actually create almost like a holding pen within your AIMDb before you allow it to enter into your AIMDb, if that makes sense. So what we've done in the past is actually create like a holding pen that lasts a week, where ITAM goes through and validates that that is actually an asset that needs to come into the AIMDb, or no, that's a duplicate record. We've already got one. There's a silly typo in the serial number, for example, on the record that's already in the AIMDb, but it gives you that audit and that clarity that what is being created by these inventory sources is actually new and is an asset that you do not already have within your AIMDb. Depending on the ITAM ownership versus governance framework, we've done a webinar on this before. The IT asset type owners are responsible for ensuring the APIs are working and connected to the AIMDb. Obviously, if you don't have that ownership out to the IT asset type owners, and ITAM actually owns all of the IT assets and the asset types, then this is obviously going to be on ITAM. To make sure that those APIs are working correctly, that they're not duplicating, that they're running as scheduled when they should be. A lot of ITSM tools, you can create alerts to be able to show this, or dashboards or reports that says when an API is broken, or a password's expired, or a certificate's expired for that API, and therefore you're not getting any further updates, or even if it just stops working for third-party reasons with the actual inventory tool that's being used itself. That can happen as well. But create alerts, create reports, create dashboards so that you can keep on track on that, and as soon as it happens, so that you're aware of it and you're aware of the impact that it has on your AIMDb. Contact all of your IT asset type owners, your key AIMDb users, to let them know that the API is down and that there may be some inaccuracies or legacy information there, but you're working on the fix. And as hardware asset management matures, you can also then start to look at integrating HR, procurement, or web store based applications. This is an open goal. Once you've got all of these ones sorted out, so first of all, you need to make sure your AV, antivirus technology, Active Directory, any data center technologies, MDM, mobile device management, SCCM, any OS specific ones like Jamf for Mac OS, for example, make sure they're all working properly and that you're actioning the data in there. And then as you mature, get your HR tools in there, have a look at some custom fields on the user table for leave dates, long-term leave information, that kind of stuff, so that you can remove those from audits, or you can create automated workflows for leavers. Procurement as well, so you can get automated procurement information to populate in the assets. It looks for the serial number, puts the invoice information, the warranty information, the cost, order received, invoice, all of that amazing stuff that you're adding in manually. You can eventually, as you mature, start creating APIs for some of these applications so that they are updating and populating your AIMDb. And it just takes so much manual work off of ITAM. You'd be silly not to have a look at that and understand how that can help your organization. So how do you actually then calculate your inventory coverage percentage? So first things first, use that AIMDb as your central source of truth. Have a look then, once you've got all of your reports from all of your other inventory tools, you can even do this really easily within Excel using X lookup or V lookup. Look for that unique identifier, which would be your serial number and do lookups. Basically, what is in the AIMDb, what is in technology 1, 2, 3, 4, however many you've got, what's missing. Obviously, there's going to be some assets that are missing from within the AIMDb in those technologies, because I would just do a dump of all the assets if you can. You can then break those up into different asset types if you have the time and you want to do that. I'm just going to do the comparison of what's in these other inventory tools that isn't in the AIMDb. Let's do that bit first. What's being inventoried that is in these inventory tools and not in the AIMDb? VLOOKUPs, XLOOKUPs, Power BI dashboards, etc. That can show you all of that. You can also get the export from your manual records for your DMZs or assets that cannot be inventoried. You'll really need the help of your IT asset type owner for this, and really reliant on the fact that they're proactively managing these, which is definitely something you need to work on as part of the process for this. And then what is the combined number of unique assets reporting across each technology? Again, Excel's the most used ITAM tool, XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, what's here, what's there, what isn't in the AIMDb. The first thing you do want to look at is what is reporting in these inventory tools that's not in the AIMDb, first things first. And then secondly from that is you want to understand what's in the AIMDb but is not in these inventory tools. If it's in the AIMDb and is listed as in use but not in the other inventory tools, it may be a legacy record that's not been updated correctly, maybe a wrong serial number. It may have been offline for so long that it's dropped off the inventory tool, but you need to fix that. That's a nice byproduct of that. You need to fix that and understand why it's in the AIMDb and not in these other inventory tools. But first things first, let's get everything in these inventory tools into the AIMDb. So you're looking at the AIMDb and the total unique assets to understand what the full coverage is. So you've got your AIMDb, you've got all of your inventory tools, and you're looking at what's in those inventory tools and not in the AIMDb, adding those together and getting that full coverage on what you should be getting in. Then you need to get those ones that are in the other inventory tools and not in the AIMDb in the AIMDb. We're saying AIMDb a lot. And then you can reverse engineer that, like we said. What's in the AIMDb and not in these other inventory tools? Well, why? Like we said, there could be an error on that one. So it's a really, really easy way, once you've got all the data that is, it is a really easy way to calculate your inventory coverage percentage. So first of all, you're using the AIMDb as your golden central source of truth, and you're looking at all of these other inventory tools, comparing that to the AIMDb. What isn't in there is your first priority. You can then calculate your inventory coverage percentage by looking at the total numbers of the ones that are in the inventory tools and the AIMDb. Do not double count though. So if it's in the AIMDb and the inventory tools, that just counts as one. Do not count it as two. So don't double count. Make sure they're unique assets, unique records based on the serial number. And you can also go through and check for any spelling issues, like where a 0 is logged as an O. It's been done manually, or like a Lenovo, the PF has then got a dash and silly things like that, just to really make sure that you have got that full unique coverage. It's tough when you first do it. There is a lot of manual work that goes into it, but once you build out your process, it becomes so much quicker and easier, and you can do this like really quickly. Provide reports to your leadership team, provide reports to the owners of these inventory tools that you've got out there, so that you can then make the AIMDb that golden central record. Here is a very basic inventory coverage reporting process. Put automated reports before you even start kicking off this process. Is you need those reports from your inventory agents, your different inventory tools, your discovery tools. A lot of these can be automated, so what I typically like to set up is a monthly or bi-weekly to start off with if it's in a real mess. Automated report that goes to ITAM, a centralized ITAM mailbox, for example, from these other teams, and then start doing the reporting. Is there anything missing from the AIMDb? If there is, then I typically send the report of what's missing to the relevant IT asset type owner or the relevant owner of that inventory tool. Once they go and investigate if there's any technical issues and fix them, we go back and do it again. Has it now been logged into the AIMDb? This may either be manual via the relevant IT asset type owner, or the tool itself updating because there was a technical problem. If there's still nothing in the AIMDb and there's no tech issues, it hasn't been manually added in and it's missing, then we're going to add any missing assets to the ITAM risk register, just so that we've got that audit record of what is missing from the AIMDb, with a commentary as to why it's missing and obviously a risk rating towards it. What you should be doing then, if you've got the option in other inventory tools, is making a note as to why it's not in the AIMDb. But really, the ideal situation should be to manually add it. There shouldn't really be any reasons as to why you can't manually yourself just add an asset in. It won't get any updates. It will be a manual record for the rest of its days unless you get it fixed with the inventory tools. But add it into the AIMDb manually. Make a note to say that you are seeing this in other inventory tools, but for whatever reason at that point it's not updating, it's not populating, it's not being created. And I would put this, a lot of ITSM tools with the AIMDb in there have work notes that kind of an auditable field. I put all of that in the work notes rather than comments, because comments can get deleted and overwritten and you don't see the history of all the comments. But there are things like work notes or attachments and stuff like that. Put that information in there so that you know when you're coming to do your inactive hardware audits that this device isn't being updated because of problem X, for example. So do that. Make sure you've got that note so that when you come and do future audits that you're not auditing what you already know isn't working properly. And I would suggest repeating this monthly or bi-weekly when you first start. Just keep doing it, get that AIMDb accurate, get it updated, fix any gremlins that there are with the inventory coverage. It will take time when you first start doing it, but you really will get used to it, and you can automate a lot of it as you mature with the process. Again, feel free to take a screen grab. This is super basic. You can start this process even from getting the data sets from the inventory tools if it's not already automated, going to the stakeholder, then giving you the report, etc. You can even go more in details as to what you're going to do to actually identify the missing ones, whether you're using Excel, Power BI, or another tool to identify what's missing. You can go really in depth into this, but this should give you a good starting point to understand just almost how easy it is to do this process. You don't need a lot of steps. You just need a bit of elbow grease, get into the data, look what's missing, fix it, get it into the AIMDb, and then reverse engineer what's in the AIMDb, not in those other tools that's listed as in use, and try to understand why and clean that up that side as well. So if you've got any missing live assets, as we've already said, the first thing you need to do is check if it's a technology issue. It may well be an inventory client issue. It may well be that there's something wrong with that device that needs fixing. 9 times out of 10, it is a really quick fix. And the next day, if you speak to your tech teams, it starts coming into your asset management database again and is happy and healthy. If it's reporting in another inventory source, you need to check that the API is working correctly. Again, this happens more frequently than you realize, that for whatever reason the API has just stopped working. As we said before, create dashboards, create reports, create alerts to make sure that you're keeping an eye on this, that the API is still working, it is still updating your assets in your AIMDb. This sounds like a silly thing, a common sense thing, but actually not so silly. And yeah, there's not, this does get slipped up sometimes, but make sure if there's an agent or a client, please make sure it's installed on the device. It should be part of any standard images. It should be pushed as soon as the device comes online for the first time. But you'd be surprised how frequently we go through some of these tools and then realize that it doesn't have an agent on it. And everyone starts finger pointing, saying, well, you should have done it as part of the image. Well, you or the asset type owner, you should have done it here. And yeah, no one wins. Just make sure that the clients are on the device or the agents. It's standard. It's 2025. Even if you're agentless, make sure whatever agent the stuff is tracking it properly. Another thing to do is to check that the asset is actually online. You can try and ping it if you can do that, or using the other inventory tools to see when it was last discovered. And all failing that, contact the user. Contact the last known user for that device and say, look, we haven't seen this device in a long time. It's dropped off this inventory tool, but it's in our asset management database. Can you confirm you still have it if you still need it? If you don't need it, we'll get it back and put it into our stock. And finally, if there's any missing live assets that you physically can't get to work into your AIMDb automatically, manually import it. There's no excuse not to have it in the AIMDb. You can manually import it in, update all the procurement record yourself, the serial number, the asset tag, the asset type owner, all of that fun stuff. All of the life cycle dates as well, just import it. If you need to, you need to. I mean, it's not ideal, but you'd rather import it and have that asset in the AIMDb than not have any visibility of it. So your coverage percentage goal should be 95+%. So this is for all your IT asset types within your AIMDb. 95+% is a real sweet spot. Obviously, anything above that is amazing. 100% would be the dream. And you can achieve 100% for pretty much a short period of time if you're a large organization, because then someone's purchased another asset. Someone's bought another asset, or it's just been delivered. It's not quite in the AIMDb yet. It's not imaged, etc. Well, technically then your AMDB is outdated. But definitely try and target that 95% coverage for all your IT asset types within your AMDB. If you keep doing this process on a bi-weekly to start off with, and then a monthly basis, you'll steadily see that inventory coverage just go up and up and up and up, as you're proactively going down, hunting down assets that are not in the AMDB, fixing any inventory clients, fixing any APIs. This number should keep going up. And also, as part of your hardware goods received and onboarding process, you should be manually adding any assets that you've ordered when the hardware vendor sends you the shipping information with the serial numbers already on there. So yeah, changing bad habits can very quickly get you up to this 95+% for your IT assets within your AMDB. So we've mentioned about unknowns and DMZs. So this can be a tricky part. So DMZs are basically, you cannot go in there. It's a demilitarized zone. No agents can go on it. It may be a really sensitive area of the business, and this happens more frequently than you probably realize, that you can't put an inventory agent on it. There may be a server there may be a desktop, it may be a couple of laptops, whatever it is, but you're still going to need to manually inventory these records via the IT asset type owners for these. So this may even be just in a spreadsheet, physically going around, putting the serial number, putting the asset tag information, when it was purchased, warranty information, who the main point of contact is for it, etc. You can manually add these into the AMDB, and also then add a comment or a work note, as we mentioned before, in the AMDB to say this is in a DMZ and it cannot be inventoried. So basically exclude it from any audits. It's going to come up in every single audit because the CI is never going to be discovered. The asset's never going to have a last discovery date. So you need to make sure that you're excluding these from any of your inactive audits. And the easiest way to do this is make sure that you clearly identify that this is in a DMZ and you know about it. It's not an unknown, it's a known. Yes, it's not getting updated information. You've got an IT asset type owner who's giving you that monthly update. So everything that you can do is in the AMDB in terms of lifecycle management info. You just don't have that automated scanning of the asset, etc. But at least you know about it. At least it's in the asset management database. So you need to make sure that you've got controls and processes in place to keep these unknowns down to a minimum and make them knowns, manual knowns, if you like. And make sure that you're really tracking this. You're pushing your asset type owners. You're even training up the team that they're in on why you need this and how important it is. And you could even get the IT asset type owners to manage those assets themselves within the AMDB. As the ITAM team, you're still going to be auditing all the information that's being put in there. But you can at least put that over to them to say, look, you're going to be responsible for updating the AMDB. We will track and validate that all the information that you've put in is relevant through our monthly AMDB audits anyway. Just a reminder as well, bring your own device does not count as an unknown. BYOD should not be listed in the AMDB. They are not your physical assets. They can still be managed by your mobile device management tools and containerizing your corporate apps in there. But from an ITAM perspective, you shouldn't have BYOD assets in your AMDB. They do not belong to you. You do not have to manage them from an asset perspective. Financially, just don't put them in there. It gets super messy and really hard to control and manage because people are popping up new BYODs all the time. So how can we manage this ongoing, and what kind of KPIs can we track? Well, first of all, the easy one is that inventory coverage percentage within your AMDB and trying to make that 95% plus. Ensure that those manually inventoried assets are updated monthly within the AMDB. You could even have a custom field on the asset within the AMDB that states that this is a DMZ asset and to a date range almost, if you like, that validates that asset is still there. We still know about it. It's been updated. Make sure you're reviewing any API connections to ensure they're working correctly. Again, this can be a great key performance indicator on uptime, downtime, etc. for particular APIs on your ITAM monthly reporting pack to show that you are being proactive and checking these to make sure that your AMDB maintains its integrity, its data accuracy, and that 95% plus inventory coverage. The number of assets within the AMDB to be tracked monthly with trending data analysis. This is a really good one as well. If you're just starting on your inventory coverage journey, is showing how many assets are in the AMDB, how many outside of it not in the AMDB, and then seeing that AMDB number keep rising, and also start showing about all the information that you've got related to those assets. What's missing, what has been completed. You could have dashboards showing missing procurement information, and then look for ones that have got missing cost, invoice reference, purchase order number. You could look at hardware lifecycle dates. This one's missing scheduled retirement dates. This one's missing warranty dates. This one's missing purchase date. Whatever it is, create these trends and analysis to show how through this inventory coverage process you are really nailing down your AMDB. You're increasing the number of assets within your AMDB, but you're also increasing the quality of data of these assets that are coming into the AMDB from a financial and a lifecycle management standpoint. And of course, please do not forget to keep assigning those assets to users within the AMDB. You can also assign them to generic or shared accounts if you've got a particular team that multiple users use the device, but it needs an owner. It needs an IT asset type owner, and it needs like an assigned to owner as well, who you can go and chase if it goes offline, etc. But this is a really good KPI that you can track to show the improvements within your AMDB and to show all of the improvements you're making by getting these assets that were previously not in the AMDB from these inventory sources into your AMDB for ongoing ITAM management. And you can also have a look at any additional technologies that you may not have within the organization that can help enrich or update asset data within the AMDB. Like a really good example of this is there's a facilities management tool that actually helps inventory and enrich monitor information. Normal agents don't do that, but there's facilities management tools that actually do give that information on what the model is, screen resolutions, energy efficiency ratings, even screen sizes. You can also assign that to a particular desk within the office, etc. So things like that, you can think outside the box. What asset types are within my scope? What do I need that I could do to make ITAM even better and provide even more information to the leadership team? And also, we mentioned before about the integration with procurement tools and also HR tools. That's not going to be something that you do first or straight out the box. So that could technically be a new technology that you want to enrich data within your AMDB. But again, that will need development. That will need APIs with these tools. You need to define what fields you actually do want to update and enrich and all of that good stuff. But you could definitely put this on your roadmap as an ongoing management, and then you can create KPIs around that. Again, going back to what's missing from a procurement standpoint, how many maternity people do we have that have got assets assigned to them, how many leavers have actually taken their equipment, that kind of stuff. So in conclusion then, please check all of your inventory sources to get an understand on what your complete estate looks like. Go back to that slide where we said about all of the unique ones, AMDB, inventory sources, total unique based on serial numbers. What does the total completion look like? Identify what percentage of your complete estate is in your AMDB. So what's in these inventory tools and not in the AMDB, and then vice versa. If you have any no-go areas, please ensure the assets are imported manually. Yeah, I know it's a pain, but it needs to be done so you can track these within your AMDB. 95% plus inventory coverage should be your initial aim. That shows that you are doing good. ITAM is effective. You've got the majority of your estate in there for budgeting, hardware refreshing, general BAU management, etc. Anything more than that is amazing and incredible. It is achievable. 100% is a bit of a unicorn because, especially depending on the type of your organization, if you're a big, large organization with multiple sites, multiple countries, etc., then 100% is going to be a challenge. If you're a smaller organization, it might be achievable and sustainable as well. But yeah, 95% plus is great as long as you know where that extra 5% are. Monthly or bi-monthly, check your hardware inventory coverage percentage and track the progress, whether it's good or bad. If your inventory coverage has gone up, great. If it's gone down, you still need to flag it and understand why so that you can fix it moving forward. Your hardware inventory coverage is a really useful process and business practice that you should be doing within ITAM, and it's something you definitely need to be reporting on a monthly basis. And the process, as you've seen, doesn't have to, blow the socks off anyone. It can be a really basic process where you're just getting data from the other inventory tools, comparing it with the AMDB, and then working with your key stakeholders to understand why certain assets are not in the AIMDb, fixing it, getting it in there, even if that's manual. You'll see a big difference in the accuracy and usefulness and trustworthiness of your asset management database. Okay, so next up we are going to have a look at hardware asset tagging. This has been a bit of a hot topic recently. Is it still worthwhile? Do we still need to be doing that? Or is asset tagging actually just a legacy technology that we don't really need to be doing within ITAM anymore? There are some cool asset tags out there now, actually, with QR codes and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be your traditional big, long barcode sticker. It can actually be a way sleeker, nicer, more 2025 asset tag on your devices. So yeah, please be sure to look out for that one, as that is the next webinar in our series.